Masechet Nazir Daf Lamed Vav. We're going to begin to talk about the very important topic of mixtures of prohibited and permitted foods. This is going to be based off these words here: V'chol mishrat anavim lo yishteh. Literally, this is talking about grapes that are soaked in water. This would be a way of making grape juice from concentrate. It would be mostly water, but it would have the flavor of the grapes that was mixed into it. And so the idea here is that even though it just has the flavor of the grapes, even if you'd strain the grapes out, still a Nazir would be prohibited to drink that. All right. The Gemara, however, is going to apply this to a slightly different case of, let's say you have grape juice, and the amount to be liable for lashes of drinking grape juice, as we saw before, is a kezait. What if there's bread that you dip into the grape juice, and now so there's half a kezait of grape juice and half a kezait of bread, but when you soak the bread in the grape juice, now it comes to a kezait all together in the mixture, and so would one be liable in that case? And the answer we're going to see in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is yes. Amar Rabbi Abhu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol isurin shebat Torah, en heter mistaref li isur chutz mi isure nazir, share amra Torah mishrat. So Rabbi Yochanan says, in all the rest of the prohibitions of the Torah, we do not say the combination principle, and permitted food will not combine with prohibited food to make a minimum shiur. For example, if you had kosher meat and non-kosher meat, and they would take out kosher fat and non-kosher fat, chelev, and you had a half a kezait of each, and they got mixed together, and one ate it, one would not get lashes. Of course, one is prohibited from eating even a small, any amount of chelev, but there's no punishment if it's less than a kezait. So if you'd combine kosher and non-kosher foods, up to a kezait, one would not get lashes until it has to be a kezait of prohibited in total. Okay, as we're going to see a little later on, if a kezait of chelev gets mixed into a whole bowl of permitted food, but you eat the whole bowl, then within that bowl you are eating a kezait. So then one would be liable as long as one ate it within a certain time period. Okay, so regarding the rest of the prohibitions, we do not apply the combination principle except for Nazir, because the Torah explicitly talks about such a case of mishrat. It says something soaked in grapes, and the prohibition therefore combines, and as long as you have a combination of the grape product together with permitted product, but together when they're mixed up, they make up a kezait, one is liable even though the grape product within it is less than a kezait. All right, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who seems to say that there is only one exception. But now we'll see an opposing view. Zairi Amar af seor bebar taktiru keman kerebi Elazar de daresh kol. Zaire says, I agree with you regarding Nazir, but I'm going to add more examples. Seor says ki kol seor ki kol chametz v'chol seor lo taktiru memenu. You're not allowed to take any seor. Leaven means like sourdough, and you're not allowed to put that onto the mizbeach. That's prohibited all year round. Not only on Pesach, seor is prohibited. In fact, the Korban Pesach, in a way, is just one example of this principle. Because really, regarding all korbanot, whenever you bring a mincha offering, if it's offered and placed on the mizbeach, it cannot be seor. It has to be a matzah. Okay, so what if one does take seor and puts it on the mizbeach? Well, one is only liable if it's a kezait. Zaidi says that kezait we judge with the combination principle. If you have a combination of seor with permitted non-chametz flour, a flour offering with matzah, you have a combination of seor with kosher matzah, and it adds up to a kezait, then one is still liable. Where does he know that from? Well, he's following the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who uses the word kol, just like in that pasuk, like kol seor. Another place it says kol, also regarding chametz, is in the context of Korban Pesach. in Shemot Perek Yud Bet, this is Kol Machmeset Lo Tochelu. So we see that Rabbi Elazar also says that regarding on Pesach, if one eats a kezayit of hametz, and everyone agrees if you eat a kezayit chametz, you're liable. Rabbi Elazar would say even if you eat a combination of hametz and non-chametz, and it adds up to a kezayit, one is also liable. Okay, so we're going to add, Zaidi is following Rabbi Elazar, and that's why he adds the prohibition of leaven on an altar as another example. Now we ask him, how come Zaidi doesn't also say chametz on Pesach? And since he's following Rabbi Elazar, who derives this combination principle from kol, and this kol is found in the context of seor on the altar, and also regarding chametz on Pesach. So Zaidi should agree with both of these, and we say you're right. In hachenameh, Zaidi does, right? So Zaidi is going to have the combination principle in Nazir and seor, bar taktiru, and chametz on Pesach. So how come in that case Zaidi only mentions seor and he didn't mention chametz on Pesach? Oh, that's for a different reason. He wanted to emphasize his position on seor, in order to show that he disagrees with Abaye. Damar yesh haktara bepachot mikezait, kamash malan en haktara bepachot mikezait. You see, Abaye, he says that even for less than a kezait, one is liable for putting seor on the altar. So that's actually more machmir. That even if it's less than a kezait. So that's why he wanted to teach actually two things by saying af seor bebar taktiru. He's teaching, number one, that no, if you have just a little bit, you're not going to be liable. You need a kezait. So he's more lenient in that way. However, he also says that kezait, if it's a mixture, even if it's a mixture of seor and non-seor, one is still liable. But it has to be part of something, part of a mixture that altogether comes to a kezait. So that's the reason why Zaidi emphasized this seor bebar taktiru, even though, in fact, he does agree hametz as well. Okay, so far we saw two major opinions. Rabbi Yochanan says the combination principle applies to Nazir only, whereas Zaidi says it also applies to seor and hametz. But now we're going to challenge the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Yatev Rav Dimi v'kamar la'alaha shema'ata. One time Rav Dimi was repeating this law that Rabbi Yochanan said. Rav Dimi was someone who often heard what the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan and brought them to Bavel. He was one of the travelers. And as he's reciting this in Bavel, itibe Abaye. Abaye had a question from a Mishnah. This is Mishnah in Masechet Tevul Yom regarding teruma, a mixture of teruma and cholin. And so this Mishnah brings two cases. Hamikpa shel teruma, vehashum vehashemen shel cholin, venaga tevul yom bemiksatan, pasal et kulan. Case number one is you have this porridge that's teruma. Midoraita, you have to give teruma from grains and from oil and wine, and so this is the grains are teruma. However, when this kohen was cooking it all together, he used garlic and oil that was cholin. It's permitted for a kohen can mix them together. They're all tahor, and so now he's planning on eating it. However, before he gets to eat it, a tevul yom comes along. Tevul yom means someone who was tameh. He touched a sheretz or something, and then he went to the mikveh already, and now he just has to wait till nightfall. So during that time period, he's tahor for most purposes. However, still cannot eat teruma. That's the first Mishnah. But achot, he has to wait till it gets dark until he is 100% tahor, and then can eat teruma. Okay, the halacha regarding a tevul yom who touches something, touches teruma, is that it will even though he's tahor for most purposes, it will make the teruma pasul. Okay, so tevul yom comes and touches the edge of the dish. The food, he touches some of the food in the dish. Pasal et kulan. Even though he only touched a little bit of the food, we consider the entire porridge to be one whole. And if he touches part of it, the entirety becomes pasul. So the idea here is that even though part of it is cholin, and so a tevul yom is not going to make cholin tameh, he only makes teruma tameh. Teruma is more susceptible, more sensitive to tuma, and so even though there is shum and shemen in it, that's chulin, but the majority of it is the porridge, which is teruma, and therefore touching part of it, it's all considered one unit, and the entire thing is going to be tameh, and now a kohen can no longer eat it. That's case one. But what if it's they flip the other way around? Mikpah shel cholin v'hashom v'hashemen shel teruma v'nagat tebul yom b'miksatan lo pasal ela mekom magao. If you have the porridge itself, the grains are from chulin grains. But then the kohen is cooking it, and he happens to have some garlic and oil that is teruma, and so he uses that to cook, to spice the porridge. But that's only a little bit. It's only the spices that are part of it. It's a minority of it. In that case, if a tibul yom comes and touches one part of the food, then it will only make pasul the place that he touched, and it will not spread. The tumah will not spread to the rest of it. Just take that part out. The idea here seems to be that since the garlic and the oil are spread out a lot and is not the main part of it, so it kind of becomes batel to the grain, and so that spot that he touches, is going to be tameh, but it's not going to spread because the garlic and the oil aren't all connected. They don't form one mass. And so that's why only that spot is tameh. Now we're going to wonder, even that spot, why would it be tameh? Why don't we say that the oil and the garlic are batel within the rest of it, and maybe none of it should become tameh, since it's majority chulin. So that's what we ask. V'havinan ba, right? And when we discussed that Mishnah, we asked mekom magao amai pasul. Even that spot, why should it be pasul? Why not just say it's all mixed in, and this minority of the spices is batel? Amar Rabba bar Hana amar Rabbi Yochanan ma ta'am ho'il v'zar lokeh aleh bekezait. Rabbi Yochanan himself, this is a long question that Abaye is asking, but we're still not over. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan, we explained this based on the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that says, when it comes to teruma, if a non-kohen eats teruma, they will get lashes if they have a kezait. So we see that, and even a mixture, he's talking about this case, where it's a mixture of teruma and non-teruma, and even if you have a mixture of teruma and non-teruma, and the non-kohen eats it, they still get lashes, even though it's a mixture. Okay, so already here, we see that Rabbi Yochanan thinks that a mixture of teruma and non-teruma is going to cause tumah. Now, how does this explain why touching a part of it will make the whole thing tameh? Why touching part of it will make that part tameh? Why don't we just say the whole thing is batel? Mai ta'ameh lab mishum de'ete mistaref le'isur. So it must be that we consider the permitted and the prohibited to mix together as one. And that's why if he eats a kezait of the mixture, that's prohibited. And that's also why it was not considered batel. See, if it was considered batel, then you would not be liable. The non-kohen would not be liable at all, even if he eats the whole thing. Once it's batel, it's batel. So we see, no, we consider it still there, because it's few and far between. It won't connect up with each other. But he still did say that if he eats a kezait, then he's liable. So that means that Rabbi Yochanan thinks that we do apply the combination principle to teruma and cholin. And that's the question. Up above, Rabbi Yochanan said, in all other isurim, we do not apply the combination principle. You have to have a kezait of the prohibited substance itself. Except for Nazir, that's the only place we apply the combination principle. But here, and based on this discussion, since Rabbi Yochanan says that if one eats this mixture of cholin and teruma, one is liable if you eat a kezait of the mixture. That's what we assume that he means. One is liable and gets lashes. So we see, hey, look, Rabbi Yochanan applies the combination principle to teruma as well. How come up above he said only Nazir? And here's the answer. He says, no. When Rabbi Yochanan said over here that one is liable 2 lashes if one eats this combination of teruma and non-teruma. He didn't mean if you have only a kezait of this porridge. He meant if you eat a peras which contains a kezait of prohibited food in it. Let's define these terms. Peras means half a loaf. That's half a loaf is about 4 eggs. Each egg is 2 kezetot. So this would be in 1 out of 8. If the mixture is big enough that there's more than 1 out of 8 parts prohibited to permitted, then it's possible to eat the entire peras. And if you eat the entire peras, within that peras, there'll be a kezait of prohibited material. And if you eat it, a peras is the shortest amount of time that you have to eat. That is considered one sitting, one act of eating. And therefore, it's not that we imply the combination principle. No, if you eat only a kezait of the porridge that has some teruma, a little bit of teruma mixed into it, then you will not get lashes. Rabbi Yochanan was talking about a case where there is an eighth or more of teruma, spices, and oil in the porridge, and one ate a peras of the porridge, and within the peras, there's enough of a ratio that there was a kezait of prohibited material in it, and so we actually ate a kezait of prohibited material. See, so it's not because of the combination principle. All right, good. So now that we explained that, we have a further question about your challenges. Vachilat peras deoraitahi. Hold on. Is this true that if you eat a peras with a kezait in it, that would be prohibited mideoraita? It seems to be so because you said that one gets lashes for that. So Amar Le'in says, yes, that is a prohibited deoraita. You don't have to eat just a pure kezait of prohibited material. It can be mixed in, and if within the mixture you end up eating a kezait, then that's also prohibited midoraita. However, there's now a challenge to that. If that's the case, then how come the majority rabbis disagree with Rabbi Elazar? This is the same Rabbi Elazar as we started with. He's the one that said kol machmeset, even a mixture, one will be prohibited when it comes to chametz. So an example of a mixture of chametz and non-chametz is the kutach. This was a very spicy or a very pungent combination of bread and sour cream, and usually it was only used as a dip because it was very strong. So it does have chametz in it, some amount of chametz, and because Rabbi Elazar learns from the word kol, then he applies the combination principle to chametz. So if someone ate a kezait of the kutach, even if it has just a little bit of bread in it, and mostly is the dairy, one would be liable. And so our question here is, fine, that works for Rabbi Elazar, but now for Rabbanan should agree with Rabbi Elazar, because if we're talking about eating a large amount, you're eating a peras of it, and within the peras there is a kezait, and let's assume with kutach habavli there is a kezait of bread within one peras, right? So more than 1 out of 8 ratio of bread of chametz to dairy, and so since if you're eating a whole peras, so Rabbanan should agree that you would get lashes for eating a peras of kutach, because within it there is a kezait of chametz, and even without the combination principle. And yet, the Rabbanan disagree regarding kutach. So why would they say kutach, you don't get lashes for eating even a large amount? Says no, that you can't bring an example from kutach habavli because you cannot possibly consume a kezait within the amount of time that it would take to eat a peras. Let's say you're eating as fast as you can, as fast as most people do, and eating a whole peras within the time that people normally eat a peras. It's between 3 and 9 minutes. So you can't eat it. You can't eat kutach that fast. Now, kutach is very pungent, and nobody it's like eating salad dressing. You don't just down a bottle of salad dressing. Use it as dip, and you have a little bit at a time. Now, idaka sharef le mishraf batla dato esel kol adam. I mishtar kashatar la mashkacht kezait bechde achila peras. And if a person is gonna just just drink, swallow a whole lot of kutach, that person is abnormal, and that person is irrelevant, because nobody does that, and so we don't have to worry about, we don't have to take such a person into account. And if you're going to eat it in the normal way, which is dipping a little bit of food into it, maybe dip some vegetables into it, then there's no way you're going to eat a kezayit within the amount of time it would take to eat a peras. And so if you eat, even though you're over an hour you're eating a kezayit, but only a little bit at a time, you don't get lashes for that. And that's the reason why the Rabbanan disagree. And so you see there's a difference between the porridge and the kutach. Porridge, yeah, that's the normal way to eat it. You eat it all, you just swallow the whole thing in one sitting. And therefore, there is a kezayit within the peras, and you can eat the whole kezayit within that time. So that's why Rabbi Yochanan said that one is liable in that case. One cannot do so regarding a kutach. And so now we solved the problem. Rabbi Yochanan, in fact, applies the combination principle only regarding Nazir, and does not apply it in the case of terumah. Okay, but the debate is not over. Abaye now raises a follow-up question. Itibe shene madochot, achat shel teruma ve'achat shel chulin, ulfanav shete kederot, achat shel teruma ve'achat shel chulin, ve'nafelu elu letoch elu shetehen mutarot. Shani omer chulin letoch chulin naflu, utruma letoch teruma nafla. Okay, the case of the Braita is you have two mortars full of spices. One of them is full of spices that is teruma, and the other one is full of spices that are chulin. And now, right in front of them on the stove, you also have two pots. One of them has teruma food, and one of them has chulin food. So obviously, the person that was preparing was planning to put the teruma spices into teruma food and chulin into chulin. However, before they got a chance to do that deliberately, they each fell into a pot, right? And now we're not sure. We didn't see which one fell into which. One of the mortars full of spices fell into one pot, one fell into the other, but we have no idea which one is which. And so we want to know: can we assume that the one that's teruma is all teruma, and the chulin is all chulin, and therefore the chulin one can be eaten by anyone? Or do we have to treat them now both like teruma? The halacha in this braita is both of them are permitted for a kohen, and both of them are permitted to kohen, because, well, no matter what, they're both permitted to a kohen, and the one that was the chulin pot is permitted to a non-kohen, because we make an assumption. Assumption is called she'ani omer, right? We say that this must be so. We assume that the chulin fell into chulin and teruma fell into teruma. Okay, the idea is when we have a safek here, we assume for leniency. Now the general rule is safek derabanan lekula, safek deoraita would be lechomra. So the fact that we are adjudicating this for leniency means that we are treating this as a derabanan. Now, what's going on? Visa kadatech kazait bichdei achilat peras deoraita, amai amrinan she'ani omer. Now, if you say that eating a kazait with that's mixed in to the amount of a peras, meaning if you eat a peras that has more than 1/8 of a prohibited substance, or here like teruma for a non-kohen, and you say that prohibition is deoraita, and that's what you just quoted Rabbi Yochanan saying, and that's how you got out of the previous answer, right? Because remember, Abaye was trying to argue that even according to Rabbi Yochanan, we do apply the combination principle. Avdimi says, no, he doesn't say the combination principle. In that case of teruma, he was talking about the kezait in achilat peras, and even though it says they get lashes, yeah, he says that's deoraita. Now, if you say that, then why would you say amay amrinan she'ani omer? If you say that this is creating a deoraita prohibition, then we should be machmir. All right. So again, the idea is that we have more than a kezait of spices that's falling into this pot, and more than kezait falling into the other pot. So if it's more than a kezait, then one would be, and one ate it, they would violate a deoraita if they ate a pras with a kezait in it, and therefore we should be we should we should follow a stringency. That's Abaye's challenge. And so Rav Dimi answers with another question. Okay, so what do you want to say, Abaye? That you want to say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, we use the combination principle and we combine the forbidden and permitted substances. Well, that doesn't answer the question either, because if you have these spices and they are teruma, and if it would fall into the cholin, so then you would apply the combination principle and you would be liable, even if it was less than a kezait of prohibited that mixed in with some cholin, and one ate just one kezait altogether, that would be prohibited. And so that would be prohibited deoraita. So even according to your explanation, you still would have no reason to say the presumption that safek rabbanan should be likula. So your presumption is no better. Therefore, I'll give you an answer that will have to work for both of us. Ela hanach l'trumat tavlin rabbanan hi. Now, since we're talking about spices, taking teruma, the obligation to take teruma from spices is only midrabbanan. From the deoraita, you have to take teruma from grain, wine, and oil, but other leaves, herbs, spices, that's only d'Rabbanan. Since the entire obligation of teruma is only d'Rabbanan, that's why we're lenient in this case, and that's how we resolve that problem. Abbe is going to bring up another question, but that's going to bring us well into the next daf. So we'll stop here. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'Amen.